Join us as we continue into the investigation of the Sasquatch experience. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sasquatch Experience for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. If you can believe we're already in February, it's like January just disappeared on us.
And it took forever, but yeah,
right? I don't know if it took forever, though, Vance. It's like we blinked our eyes and it was gone as we're, already through the first month of the year. And, of course, I think the next thing we have on our minds is the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. So we've got that coming up. That, so far, knock on wood or wood-like substances, we're all going to be in attendance at OBC this year, which is a pretty spectacular thing. That is rare.
I want a self-written contract from Matt that he's going to be there.
I will be there, yeah. I will definitely be there. Yes.
He wants it in blood. Yes. I want it written in blood. Yes. He wants it in blood. Man, we got a good audience with us tonight. Of course, broadcasting across X, across YouTube, Facebook, you name it. We're going to be on it, guys. And what a great show we have tonight. Going back into the weird, bizarre Bigfoot, the Orbs. And I know we've danced around this topic for some time. Because I don't want to speak for anybody else, but we're four different individuals. We all have different beliefs on what this is. Some of us aren't afraid to dabble into the paranormal. Some of us, like me, aren't really great at playing around in the paranormal. But we're going to talk about it tonight because as much as anybody would like to dismiss the facts, these things are still being observed together. These phenomena are happening together.
Yep.
And before I continue to filibuster, Vance, Matt, what do you guys think on this subject? Going right in.
Oh boy, I have a little bit to contribute regarding at least the Orbs portion of this. Remember when we were little kids and you'd blow bubbles, or mom or dad would blow bubbles?
No, James.
Okay, cool it, James.
Michael Jackson.
Clown.
Stop it.
But, we would have this fascination of running around and catching them. But there is some interesting research that I've done personally of other scientific researchers.
So you've done research on blowing things.
Stop it.
Oh, man.
There it went.
Go this way. Why? Why did I bring this up?
You can't.
Keep going. The train has already left the station. Keep it rolling.
It did. But there is scientific research in biology, and clearly the term of this is playing on a sense of words, and it's called Wood Wide Web. Okay, like the World Wide Web, only Wood Wide Web. And what it actually is, it's a fungus called mycorrhizal, and it creates a network in forests between the roots, because when you're in a forest, all the roots intertangle with each other. And this lets trees know and exchanging information of nutrients and water and stress. But with that amount of energy between the trees and the forest, and I know this sounds very much like a woo thing, it does, but maybe there's something to it. That takes energy. With that amount of communication between the trees and a forest, and then we're talking a dense forest where all roots are intertwined with each other, and there's this communication network that creates energy. And I'm wondering if that energy releases itself kind of like we do after we eat a taco and, Taco Bell, and let that energy loose. I'm just saying, if that energy lets itself loose, it might be something similar to an orb under intelligent control, because plant life itself, look, there's a number, and I'm trying to fit so much in this short period of time here. There is such a large number of plant life that mimics mammal life, birds and insects. There are plants that simulate themselves to look like a hummingbird to attract hummingbirds. There's plants that are, the pot plants that imitate themselves as a watering bowl to draw mammals and small creatures into it, and they cannot escape, and they trap that as a food source. Venus flytrap. It produces a nectar to attract flies and other for it to eat. How did the plants know this? There's no brain cells, so there's something bigger and more miraculous going on here. And so it's possible that maybe these forests produce these energy orbs, and maybe a Bigfoot is attracted to it. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I get to go next. I'm sorry, I have to. So you're talking anywhere from Avatar to The Happening. Okay, so like plants could talk to each other and they could make us commit suicide, or they give us a lot of brains.
Right.
You make a lot of keen points that plants do kind of communicate, and that I think nature in general has a frequency. My thing is like, for every time somebody says this thing isn't possible, and then 5 seconds later they go, but I believe in Bigfoot, you've got to step back a notch and go, wait, if you can believe in a large hairy creature, you can let an orb happen. Do you know what I mean? So I think you make some valid points, but I think we have to recognize the fact that the supernatural and the animal kingdom, if you can believe in Bigfoot, then you can believe in the potential of a magical unicorn.
No,
you just have to listen.
Agreed.
You just have to make sure there's enough science behind it. And clearly in that small little snippet, okay, you put in so much science. And then, Henry, you okay over there? Because that cough sounded like you shoved it through the wall.
It was just a sneeze. I'm fine.
I'm glad. I thought we were going to have to pick up some of your brain there off the floor. Glad you're better, Henry. But again, though, we take it from the position that it's supernatural, the orb in itself. And,
Right.
Vance, you try to come up with a rational explanation for it, but then you also talk about, and something I read earlier today doing some prep for the show, and maybe I understood it right, maybe I didn't, not exactly the world's greatest brain here, but plasma has a tendency to follow electromagnetic fields.
Mm-hmm.
So what if it's just following whatever's emanating from these creatures, and that it's just generating more energy for it through however it's picking it up from the Bigfoot? It's not that it's generated or created by this thing. It just happens to be localized and feeding off it. Right.
And I tend to agree with that as well, Sean, because these are still all unanswered questions. But looking at it in a scientific perspective, that makes sense. I mean, when you talk about just a strike of lightning, you're separating negative and positive ions from each other, and it creates an electrical charge, and you get a bolt of lightning. That within itself is a phenomena that is absolutely mind-blowing. And considering the fact to this very day, we're talking February 3rd, 2025, and science still cannot identify what gravity is. There is no definition to what gravity is. We all experience it, but there is no explanation of gravity. So there's still so many questions to be answered. And that's why I brought up, the fungus network within trees. Maybe they're releasing some sort of an energy once it builds up, that it becomes this orb and releases under some sort of intelligent design. What it seems like intelligent design. I believe I've witnessed this. I'm not sure that's what it was, but I did witness some really strange things. And I know Alex Petikoff, he witnessed this also. So, along with Sean or with Seth Breedlove, they all witnessed this. This is a strange phenomena. We haven't grasped around it yet. But what is the tie between that and a Bigfoot encounter?
So here
is Bigfoot attracted to this the same way we were as children to snowflakes and bubbles and other simple things that we were really attracted to and we would chase after?
So here's one thing for you. And I was just happening to think about this sitting here. I'm a big Star Trek fan. And one of the things that people hated about one of the newer shows, Star Trek Discovery, was that the ship used what they called the mycelial network, ability to transverse space and apparently dimensions using a highway created by fungus. So it uses the spores to generate almost a portal to go from point A to point B to propel the ship, move the ship, right? So we talk about Bigfoot exiting portals, and they're seen exiting, coming in and out of portals. I've not seen when people talk about it. You said something about fungus there, Vance. What if there is the potentiality of something real like a mycelial network that these things can traverse and open portals and go in and out? Why does it have to be super science, and why can't it be natural science?
All right. I guess that's kind of the angle that I was trying to attack that from, was that it may be just a simple undiscovered science that we haven't unfolded and opened the book on yet, because we're not that far as far as our technology or our research. But it could be something very simple like that, Sean. It could be something very simple like that. You're talking about a spore that can grow in a forest, and people go out in groves to pick, these mushrooms. And there's a variety of mushrooms. Well, where did they come from? They're not a seed, it's a spore.
Right.
And if this fungus, which has been proven to connect a network within the forest between the roots of all trees, and it has, I've watched these videos. It's absolutely fascinating. It's a steel probe about 1.5 feet long that's driven into the ground in a forest, which is actually a hypersensitive microphone. And you can listen to the energy feeds between these trees, and it's musical. It's not things that you hear that you want to pull your headphones off. It's a musical interlude of information. What that information is, we don't know, but we're listening to it, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Matt, Henry, anything you guys like to chime in here about these interesting things we're postulating here tonight?
Well, I have something to share. I actually had an experience back in 2010 where I was outside. And I was actually calling for Sasquatch, doing, what is it? Call blasting.
Okay.
And I saw this. This was in December of 2010. I saw this light up in the sky, which streaked across, and it wasn't. I thought at first it was fireworks, but I realized there was no sound to it. So what it was, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
could that have been an orb or something in the sky? I really can't say for sure.
What color was it?
But it was kind of a whitish color, maybe a bluish white.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
I know a lot of orbs have that description of a brilliant light blue or a white color. What I've seen was more of a reddish color. So I don't know what to make of that. But it's interesting that you mentioned that, Henry, because a lot of witnesses that see these orbs refer them to almost a white but a light blue color.
So there is some scientific fact that goes behind orbs, that some of it's particles in the air and the light hits, right, and things like that, or a light source was present and then a tree, like a limb moves or something like that, and then it becomes visible. I sent you guys that kind of link that explains some natural versions of orbs. And some of it is like from working with cellular technology and some of the technologies we worked with at the store is it all matters to what the locations around you, to what kind of waves and beams will work. Because like if I'm near a building with aluminum siding, I will have more cellular service. Mm-hmm. But I will also, if the light hits it right, there will be orbs in the tree. Also, it also affects your own eyes, that you start to see those little squiggly things in your eye, and that, you know, you in some cases your brain can't 100% coalesce what it is, right. And you use the rest of your brain, the artistic side of your brain, to fill it in. Kind of like when you ever see one of those shows where somebody looks at a shadow on the wall, and I see a demon, Matt sees an angel, you see whatever, but none of those are there. It's just a blob. Okay, but our brain fills it in so that we can comprehend it, you know.
So then what is the correlation between what we're talking about with these orbs and a Bigfoot? Is it a curiosity thing, or is one having to do with the other?
Well, that's the age-old question, isn't it? Now, and I think to get into that, you know, we have to talk about some of the situations where these things have been encountered. And the first thing I think about, and you gentlemen probably understand what I'm going to say, is from the Small Town Monsters documentary. I think it was Chestnut Ridge down in Pennsylvania, down in the southwestern part of Pennsylvania, where they were observed carrying these orbs of light.
Right.
Right. But what are they? I don't know, and I'm going to try to find the actual account and bring it up here. But you know, are they some technology they use to activate a portal? Are they something to use to transport themselves? There's been instances where these things have been shot and they've exploded into light.
Right.
That's also happened in Southwest Pennsylvania. Either the Bigfoot in Southwest Pennsylvania are really eating these mushrooms, Vance, and they've gotten up on that mycelial magic, or people down here in the Southwest Pennsylvania are really enjoying those mushrooms.
One or the other. Mycelium magic.
Yeah. Now I can tell you that I was out with Rick Chirby, his wife, Eric Altman, down on the Chestnut Ridge. And while we were out, Adam Cox, a good friend of ours, while we were out, she had filmed some orbs floating around the tops of the trees. And they were non-localized light phenomena. Like, there was nothing making these lights. They were self-illuminating, and they were dancing among the trees, like free-floating. And it was one of the damnedest things I've seen. I'm trying to find the video on my phone. I might be able to share it on the show if I can find it. But it was just a hell of a scenario because I happened to be there for it. And then if you just take that one step further and you just take away orbs and talk about just strange light phenomena, that in itself is a whole nother category. Like, there's something going on with either an attractant, that these creatures are just a breeding ground for this kind of light phenomena. There's something that's coincidental and not exactly, they're coinciding, but they're not one and the same. Or these things have the ability to generate some, something we can't explain, something we don't
Right.
know.
There's a fascinating article that was written by the late, great Linda Gottfried. And her and I forget the gentleman's first name. His last name is Hempel. And it's in her book. I'd have to go over to my bookshelf here. But they had an encounter with one of these orbs. And they sat in their car and they watched this thing. And this was in southern Wisconsin. They sat in their car and they observed this orb moving about what she described in an intelligent way. Now, I can understand how people would come up with intelligent way, moving left to the right, up and down. And Hempel grabbed his mag light that was in his car and he shined his light on it and it immediately disappeared. And it got within very close proximity of their vehicle in which they were driving. And because they were actually doing research for the dog man at the time, they didn't go out to look for these orbs. They were looking for evidence of the dog man. And this happened, and he shines his mag light on it, and it just disappeared. And it freaked her out beyond belief. But yeah, it's in her book with all the details. I find that a fascinating story. Again, is this just an energy release, or is this under intelligent design? I know that's the $1 million question, but again, let's draw that back to what does that have in correlation with Bigfoot? Is it a curiosity with Bigfoot the same way it is with us, and we want to figure out what it is, or is it something it has a relationship with?
Anybody want to tackle that? Anybody next?
Well,
Right?
you think about the high strangeness from Western Pennsylvania, especially back around 1973 to 1974.
Right.
And
The
you think
Westmoreland
about
County flap.
you think about exactly all the Bigfoot / UFO reports that came out of that area. People were seeing all kinds of weird stuff. They were seeing orbs. They were seeing Bigfoot. They were seeing Bigfoot carrying these weird objects, these glowing objects.
Right.
Well, Henry,
You were
I
seeing-
have an example of that you're talking about right now. And this was from September 27, 1973 at about 9:30 in Beaver County. Two girls saw a white humanoid covered in white fur and had glowing red eyes. It appeared to be holding a glowing large luminous spear in its hands and was about 8 feet tall. After seeing the figure, the girls bolted back into the house and their father went out into the woods in an attempt to track down the creature. He was gone for over an hour, and when he returned, he refused to talk about what he had seen. At the
Right.
same time he was in the woods, several nearby people claimed to see a silvery object hovering over the forest, and at one point it emitted a beam down into the woods. And that was reported by Stan Gordon, 1974, at a
Right.
MUFON UFO symposium. So you
Right.
talk about, Henry, that time period. I just wanted to put that out there because you mentioned that time. There was a perfect example of that.
Interesting.
Yep.
Stan Gordon, in his book Silent Invasion, has a bunch of examples.
Yes, it does.
And it's a great book. And Stan
Yep.
doesn't
Yep.
mind getting
Yep.
a little weird with it. Matt?
No.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I could talk about with the orbs. So, because I actually saw one with my own eyes during a Bigfoot investigation, and people were having experiences down the mountain, a little further down the mountain, and I'm looking at this thing. I said, "What the heck is this?" It looked like somebody with a bright flashlight that was
Where
coming
at?
through the woods. This was in Columbia County,
Okay.
Pennsylvania, and I had no idea what it was, but I do have some theories about the whole issues with orbs and Bigfoot. But there's other times too that people have seen, whether it's swamp gas, whether it's ball lightning. There's other unnatural lights that come through, such as the lights that they have. I believe that's down in Tennessee or North Carolina with the mountain.
Oh yeah, brown mountain lights.
Yes, the brown mountain lights. So
Right.
you do have different light phenomena. One story, it's a ghost story, but there's actually not that far from Williamsport. There's a mountain where there was a plane crash, killed the doctor who was the pilot, and people claim that if they go up there at night, they see an orb in the area where the plane had crashed. That's how they figure. And if they follow the orb, they end up finding where there's a small little plaque to commemorate the incident. So there's all different explanations for the orbs, but I am one person that I don't think that there's that much of a connection between Bigfoot and the orbs, other than it's something that they're attracted to. And it may be something that it may be more common in the woods than we're aware of.
Right.
And for someone that's out in the woods all the time, they're going to see this as something that, is potentially harmless, isn't going to, and it may, give them something to do. It may be like us watching TV, or doing some sort of activity. They're going to chase this thing because a lot of times these are happening out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So as that's going on, again, I think that's a big attractant. The other thing too is, you get people that camp out in the middle of nowhere, and they have a fire going, or they have their flashlights going, and if they're out in an area.
Did we lose Matt?
No.
Oh, there he is. He's back. He's back.
Is he back?
Oh, okay.
I'm back.
There he goes.
Yeah, I think I'm back. I was sitting there. It just disconnected. So I don't know where it cut off, but I was going to say for campers,
Flashlights and campfires.
Yes. So if somebody's out in an area, maybe out west where there hasn't, maybe they just opened the area in the spring or early summer, and that's when people have encounters. Maybe they're drawn to the lights, thinking that they're orbs.
Well, you make a valid point. The one point is like we've had these discussions multiple times about how we change the environment, and it's odd that there are more sightings once that happens. Well, most animals, if something changes in their environment, prey animals will hide. But like predator animals and stuff like that will investigate what it is, because it may either be a new food source or maybe something they need to avoid. You know, and I think that from what the science that I've gathered of the Sasquatch, or even the aliens or the orbs or whatever it is, they all seem to want to know and control their environment. Otherwise, they wouldn't be as good at hiding as they were.
Good
Absolutely.
point.
Yep.
We do have to take our break here, guys. It is 9:30. Folks, stick around. We'll be back right after this. Bigfoot Bullhorn, brought to you by Vince Nesbitt. Stay tuned.
News team, assemble!
I have a fear of flying now. I never had a fear of it. It's not straight across the board flying. I don't like small planes all of a sudden. I just don't like them. It has nothing to do with the plane. I believe in the planes. Okay? I just don't believe in the pilots. Because you know why? I don't think the airline does either. Which is why that dude is flying that little plane.
Ah, yes. Parachutes for everyone. Coming from this aviator, I can assure you, that airline travel and aircraft travel is still the safest mode of transportation, including walking. You know, I don't always roll a joint, but when I do, it's usually my ankle. Well, happy Monday night to you all. And as I had a conversation with Sean earlier, being that it's February, we're still officially in the frightened turtle season. And for you ladies, the headlights are on. But we're not here to talk about frightened turtles, but KLIX News Radio. I will give you the information and watch a video after you're done listening to the Sasquatch Experience. It's interesting. Finally, Bigfoot lovers rejoice. We finally have our first major Bigfoot sighting of 2025. And let us start by saying it's a frightening one. The Bigfoot sighting in Idaho, which I always thought was pronounced Ohio, our side of the country is a prime location for Bigfoot to wander. Just think about it. There are so many places to hide, and you get 4 seasons. And as far as we know, there is plenty of things in the area to eat. Speaking of that, is Bigfoot hunting small or big game for food? And does it dumpster dive? I know we've all had that question. Now, putting those opinions aside, an ATV rider caught some shocking footage while on an unnamed trail in Idaho. The video was picked up by the YouTube channel Otherworldly News. You can go ahead and write that down. Otherworldly News on YouTube. And trust us when we say it does look otherworldly. Now, as the ATV rider rides along a trail through the Idaho outdoors, well, of course outdoors, and too many indoor trails, we suddenly see a massive dark figure crossing the trail. And when we say the humanoid is dark, you can make the case that this being was a shadow figure, a paranormal entity made up of pure darkness. Also, when you do see the video, pay attention to the movements, particularly the arms. It almost appears ape-like and lines up with every myth and legend we've heard about Bigfoot. The encounter frightened the ATV rider so much that they turned around without any hesitation. So let us know what you think of this video. When we come back, well, let's warm up those frightened turtles and turn off those headlights and go down to Florida.
You're listening to the Bigfoot Bullhorn right here on the Sasquatch Experience.
It's not Gawkers, it's Got Knockers. Hey, have you been to the Squatchfield site on the interweb that has it all? Introducing GotKnockers.org. Stop on by for an intriguing story of the encounter that started it all. But wait, there's more. Got Knockers offers some fabulous merchandise like t-shirts, hoodies, onesies for the baby, plus a stunning array of jewelry and some fantastic sauces that will make your taste buds dance. But the coolest of all is a genuine Got Knockers tree knocker. Stop on by and say hi to the folks of Got Knockers, Gwendolyn and Michael Purcell. Get in on the action and just visit GotKnockers.org. Again, GotKnockers.org. Well, now, let's head on down to Florida. Well, why, you ask? Well, because the Great Florida Bigfoot Conference. It is an annual event happening in Ocala, Florida at the World Equestrian Center. The 2025 event will take place on Saturday, April 5th. For further information regarding speakers and vendors, will be available at BigfootFL.com. Again, BigfootFL.com. The address for this fun event is 1750 Northwest 80th Avenue in Ocala, Florida. Thanks again for listening to this edition of the Bigfoot Bullhorn right here on the Sasquatch Experience. And as the twig and berries always say to your underwear before you wash them,
until we meet again,
keep your toes in the mud.
Thanks, Vance, for that lovely segment.
Lovely.
Appreciate
That's
that.
the way to wrap it up. Lovely. Yeah, that's
Well,
great.
you keep us engaged, and that's the thing that matters the most.
I tried.
Man, there we go. First part of the show talked about orbs, strange light phenomena as we start to wind into the thing we have to understand. We want the listeners to understand is, one, we're not making any claims one way or the other about this being a legitimate part of the research. All we know is that it's observed together, right? Yep. These phenomena are seen. We gave you one example there we gave us one example from Stan Gordon with those girls in '83, and there we go with the ums and ahs again. Sorry, guys. Back in '83 in Beaver County, and I'm trying to pull up some more. Henry May joined some more examples of that. But as we go through, a lot of people have written about this. Ronnie LeBlanc, from formerly on Expedition Bigfoot, in his book Monsterland, discussed the kind of paranormal aspects of Bigfoot very freely. And Ronnie, he's not bashful about the fact that he does feel there's a connection to him. Stan Gordon will tell everyone that he lets the evidence speak for itself and you make your own determination. But I think Stan heavily infers that there's a connection.
Right.
But when we think of the connection between UFOs, Bigfoot, these paranormal phenomena, what if it's anything but paranormal? What if there's a natural explanation for it? And that's where I'm stuck. That we can't explain it, so we attribute these, what we consider paranormal, which is really, I don't know, that's a fallacy, right? Because we can't explain it, and it's not what we perceive to be within the realm of normal, it is by definition paranormal. But does that have to mean otherworldly or otherrealmly or non-corporeal? What's the definition, and what's the creation of this, I guess, nomenclature? Why does it have to be anything that's just not natural?
Right.
That was very wordy. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, that's okay. There was, and forgive me, because now that we're going down this vein of the conversation, I don't remember a lot of names. I believe it was the scientific research team, NIDS, maybe, that went to Skinwalker. And there were two of the researchers that saw this large orb at Skinwalker, and they described it as opening up and seeing one of these creatures step out of this light orb and then went off into the wilderness. This was their testimony. And they tried to capture so much of this, on video capture and all the sensitive equipment that they had at the time. And I believe this goes back to probably the late 90s. So technology is not as advanced then as it is today. But this is what they witnessed, and this is what they described, that they see this orb, they're watching it, and it seemed like it had opened up to a darker hole and then seeing a large bipedal creature step out of it and walk off it. Maybe that was just,
kind of gave birth to it.
Yeah, kind of. But, was this part of a totally enhanced propaganda to bring more interest to the subject, or was this something that actually happened?
Who knows? You're talking about the National Institute of Discovery Science.
Yes.
Yeah, NIDS. That's right, isn't it, Henry? I see him shaking his head there, so that must be an affirmative.
I think so.
We had to consult the oracle
I
on
believe
that
so.
one.
Right.
Not NADS, Baker. NIDS. NIDS, not NADS.
Right.
So they found orbs near the nads.
Right.
So, well, listen. Now we've had.
And he went down to that vein.
Oh boy, we had to go there, didn't we?
We did.
Sorry.
We had Dwayne Pintoff on the show a while back, and he was out with Eric Altman, and Dwayne also experienced what he thought he saw a doorway open up in the woods, is what I believe he described it as, a doorway.
Right.
And again, these situations are observed. They're experienced. As much as I may not feel that they are connected to our favorite subject matter here, doesn't mean I'm right. But two, it doesn't mean it's not worthy of notation.
Right.
And so we're in the situation now where I think we have to notate everything, no matter how bizarre or extreme it may be. When we ignore it, we aren't asking for the scientific credibility behind it, because we're going ahead and we're ignoring evidence that's in front of us because it doesn't fit within our bias.
In the narrative, right.
Right. And so how often have we done that in the past, though? Like, if we haven't had those blinders up, and because it doesn't fit within what our idea of Bigfoot is or comfortable.
Oh, I hear the train.
Choo choo.
I'm trying to press the button.
We ignore it. And how detrimental has that been? Like, have we put ourselves behind because of that?
Right. I brought up a point a long time ago, and it might have been with you, Sean. Let's say aliens, the gray aliens, or Bigfoot and humans and other alien entities. All the physical features seem to resemble a similarity. So you have a head, two eyes, nose, mouth, mounted on a neck, on the shoulders, with two arms and two legs, walks bipedally. That's how we see the grays. That's how we see aliens. That's how we see Bigfoot. And that's how we see ourselves. Is that the most perfect design for an intelligent species throughout the universe?
We don't know.
And I only bring that up because that is the only common link that all these things share with each other, is that the autonomy is similar.
But I would let Matt finish this thought. But the fact is that a lot of times, and Matt probably knows from investigations, is your mind fills into what you know to be able to see something. Same like Sean made a point earlier about how we miss things, and we really ought to treat every sighting as a crime scene. But I'll let Matt finish that thought because he probably has a little more information on it.
Yeah, I mean, we could sit there and you can have somebody that says that they saw, a saucer come in, they saw these objects come out. And again, it's just like the pareidolia, where we're going to, our minds are automatically going to humanize what we see. They're going to put those human attributes to it. And so, that's what people are getting in saying, okay, this thing had, 4 fingers, like we have fingers. It had, as you said, a neck, a thorax or a body, and go from there. Where, in all actuality, we don't know what they might be saying,
And to touch back on Vance, when you said, is this anatomy, this seems to be the commonality that we share these basic attributes, 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, a head.
Mhm.
Do we, though? Or is that just the influence of Star Trek and Star Wars and all that other science fiction that's creeped into our lives over the years? Because if you talk to scientists, some scientists will tell you that that just doesn't make sense for some species of extraterrestrials based upon the type of environment they live in. But then again, you go into things like, we've talked about shapeshifters. And are they non-biologics, or are they just a different biologically evolved species than us that occupy this same planet? We don't know. It's weird. It's weird as hell. This show is getting into the weird tonight, and that's okay.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Right.
This is the $1 trillion question, right?
Right. You go into skinwalkers, you go into different creatures reported through different myth, and it does make you wonder. There are, portions of this, even the Bigfoot mystery, folks like to make, comparisons to the, Wendigo and what have you, which is not a Bigfoot. It's something completely different.
Right.
I think that's more of a spiritual entity than Bigfoot. But, again, there are people that think Bigfoot's a spiritual entity, and that.
But does this not go back to how many people, whether they're not researchers or they are researchers, you take both categories, and they have an experience with a bipedal creature, but they've also had an experience with these strange lights, these orbs moving throughout the forest. It's happened a number of times. You'll have people that have had a Bigfoot encounter, and it takes them, 5 years to get out into the woods again to figure out what it is that they saw. And now they're seeing these light orbs in the same area in which they had this encounter. Clearly, there's something going on that's very strange. And it's happened numerous times. It has happened numerous times where you're going to go out there, you're going to try to record and find this mysterious being that we don't know a whole lot about, and then these light orbs show up. And it's like, well, that took us off in a completely different direction. What are these things doing, and where do they come from?
But if they always been there and now you're attuned to see them, do you know what I mean? Like, I know plenty of people that once they've seen something, everything has a purpose, when before it was just something minor, and I'm not dissuading what they see or whatever it is, but like you said, is somebody goes out in the woods, ain't been out there in 5 years, they're a little twitchy as it is, and everything they see is like, oh, what was that? What was this? Like, technically, if you look behind my head, that's a light for my turtle, but somebody could say, there's an orb there. Yeah, it's an orb. Yeah, it's GE bulb. I bet you the turtles think it's their sun god. I mean, it's all perspective.
Right.
No, and that's understandable. I think a lot of the excitement of seeing something like this is very tangible. Like I said, I have, a couple of times in my life have seen stuff I can't explain what it was. And it moved in a way, I should say they moved in a way, because there was a number of them that just seemed not human, certainly not human ability to travel the speeds in which they did and travel the heights in which they did. And I stood there completely stunned going, what am I looking at? I have no idea. I don't think that was something that was created by, fish, birds. No, I don't. Because when you're looking at it unexpectedly, I mean, this happened without any intent of wanting to see something. This was going out to go have a cigarette, and the next thing you know, I'm watching this stuff, and I'm like, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you can't rule
I don't know.
out things like misidentification and that excitement, but not misidentification of the creature. What if it's misidentification of an object?
Right.
Misidentification of something else associated with it. As we start talking about these things being seen, reported carrying balls of light or what have you, what if it's a reflector of some sort it happened to pick up? Or, I mean, it's self-illuminating. What if the damn thing picked up someone's lantern? I mean, things we just don't know or maybe don't think about as possibilities. No, it's a stretch. I give you that. It's probably a major stretch. But think about these things you've heard over the years of Sasquatch, having that cloaking ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's not cloaking at all, and it's just how the sun's hitting the hairs on the Bigfoot's body?
Right. Yeah.
Matt, we've talked about that ad nauseum in the past, about the way light bends and is manipulated more easily than we've ever thought it was before. Could that explain some of the other phenomena we see? And then the mind puts things together, and then all of a sudden we observe something we really didn't observe. The mind just, as Baker said earlier, filled in the blanks, right?
Mm-hmm.
These things are real potentials, and we can't rule them out. I got a copy of Astonishing Encounters right here by Stan Gordon right in front of me, and I was just running through it real quick for some reference while we were talking. We had the Bigfoot bullhorn going on, and there was a story, page 29 of the book, called Out of Focus, Bigfoot in Cambria County. At about 3:15 in the morning on June 24th, 1995, the witness Joe and a friend were driving west on Route 422 and had just passed the town of Revlock, which is a sister city to the town of Culver. Joe noticed in the distance, about a quarter of a mile away on a straight stretch, that something, what he thought at first was a deer, was in the center of the road. As it approached closer, he saw an animal that looked tall, was covered with dark brown hair, and stood on two legs in the middle of the road. Joe and his friend were familiar with bear, and during his life, Joe had seen a number of bear, both in daylight as well as night, and realized this creature was not a bear or anything he was familiar with. Joe approached the creature until the vehicle was about 50 feet away from it. 50 feet's not that far.
Right.
The creature, which was about 7 feet tall, stood erect, was covered with dark brown hair, had long arms, and looked to weigh about 400 pounds. Joe told me that whatever this thing was, it was tall with a small waist and had broad shoulders. As the two men watched, the huge hairy creature turned sideways and took a few long strides and walked from the center of Route 422 west, from the right to left. It continued to move off the road and proceeded up a small embankment and into a wooded area. Joe said that as soon as his passenger saw the hairy biped, he yelled out loud, "Dark brown, tall, wide chest, two legs," as he started describing it. But Joe also mentioned that there was an odd detail that was observed as the creature went up the side of the hill. Joe stated that the chest area of the animal was wide and deep, but the lower half of the body appeared to be slightly out of focus. That out-of-phased appearance followed the creature as it walked. The witness stressed that it was not fog and that it was as clear night at the time of the observation. Joe pulled his truck over as the creature moved into the woods. He tried to position the truck to shine his headlights towards the area, but was not successful. He shut off the truck engine and rolled down his window, but noticed no sound or smell. Joe admitted at that point that both of the men were scared. They sat there a couple minutes, but nothing further had happened. So it was a very interesting scenario as they're talking about the lower half of that body being out of phase, right? We talk about how light bends and light effects, and there again, you have headlights shining and illuminating. It just kind of caught my attention there as we were talking about some of this. Not exactly orbs, but still weird phenomena.
Right. And I still, I don't know if you're on the same page with me, Sean. To start my investigation, and when I say start the investigation, it's been started, but it started on the flesh and blood. I'm not going to go to the woo, and I'm not going to go to this, other dimensional not to say that it's not, but I want to start in one spot and research it until the point is completely exhausted before I move on to something to say, yeah, this is paranormal.
No, and I think that's a fair position, Vance. I spent my whole life in this camp of flesh and blood because that's what I truly believe this to be. However, that does not negate the potential for some unexplained phenomena be attached to it, or that it has capabilities that we don't know because we haven't been able to see that in other creatures.
Right.
Does this thing have an intelligence? I don't know. I think it does a really good job of hiding, but that's a different type of intelligence. You know, there's a self-preservation. But what if, and here we go with those what ifs, this is a lot more intelligent than we give it credit for.
Right.
I don't think it is, because anytime I think we've observed one, that's been an oh shit moment for a Sasquatch as much as it's been for us.
Right.
They're not sticking around and trying to make themselves known. Normally, when they've noticed they've been observed, they try to get the hell out of Dodge themselves.
Right.
Now, that's not always the case, but in most situations, they retreat. There are some more aggressive encounters that we have, but most of the time, they like to stay out of sight.
Yeah.
So
I would stay out of sight, from humans too.
Right.
Look, there are creatures of the wild that understand what hunting is. They understand what the boomstick is.
You're damn right.
They'll stay away from that. And if they see a human, we're out. We're done. But we are the most dangerous species on this planet. We're out. We're going to move along. I don't care how big I am. You have some tool that can take me out, and I don't want no part of it. So I'm just going to move along. And if you shit your pants, sorry for the language, because you saw me, oh, well, too bad for you, but I'm moving on.
But I think that's also perspective, though, because if you look at, I was watching a Western the other day, and I watched well, I can use Indian. Why not? He shot 4 guys from a distance as well as you could ever see a sniper. And I know it's a movie, but the fact is that supposedly the Native Americans saw these things a lot more than we did, had more genuine interactions with them. I think it's got to come down to intent. It's sort of like when when we tamed the West, the natural people and the animals and everything else are like, oh yeah, white man's here. We need to move because they're nothing but they're going to spread more of them and they're going to take what we got. Compared to like the Native American, was like, oh yeah, that's Bob. He lives over there. He fishes like we do. He doesn't try to exterminate my cave. We're good. So I think intent has an idea of why a creature would hide. And I've always said the two things. It's either non-existent or it's extremely intelligent, because if it's not smarter than the average animal, then we would hit it with a truck by now. Trust me, it's the way I drive.
Yeah, well, Henry, did you want to add anything else here before we wrap it up?
No, that's it.
All right, folks, we got to end it for tonight, but we'll bring this back on another program. Next show on the 17th, we have Steve Coles coming on. He's going to be talking about his new book, which I got a preview for today. I'm going to give that a watch and see. Give it a watch. Give it a read, because apparently my senses aren't all together. It's called Bigfoot, A Scientific Examination. New book coming out in March by Steve Coles. We're going to have him on in 2 weeks to talk about it. And, of course, it's been a long time since we've had the old Squatch detective here on Sasquatch Experience.
Good
Henry, go ahead and give us those dulcet tones.
That's you.
He'll be good or be good at it.
There it is, folks. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Woohoo!
Keep on squatching.
You've been listening to Sasquatch Experience. Please rate and review where this podcast has been consumed. To share your experience, visit us on Facebook, our website, or email us info@sasquatchexperience.com. Keep on squatching.